Hi, everyone. This is the Leadership with Heart podcast, and this is Heather Younger, your host. Employee experience and retention is powered by emotions. Managers and or leaders within organizations get to choose which emotions they unleash from within the people they lead. Leaders, meaning supervisors or above in an organization, drive much of the positive or negative emotions by their actions or inactions, their words, or what they fail to say. When a manager chooses their words and their actions carefully, they exhibit great emotional intelligence. These managers are often thought of as leaders who care, or as I like to call them, leaders with heart. This special brand of leader drives engagement and loyalty simply by being themselves. Are these leaders perfect? Absolutely not. It is in their awareness and sharing of some of their imperfections that we realize their brilliance. In this podcast, I ask you to see yourself in the stories my guests tell about the times when they were not the best versions of themselves, but how they used their hearts to guide them to a place of deeper connection with their teams and heightened leadership prowess. Before we get started, I wanted to remind you to follow us on Twitter at Customer Fanatics. That's customer and then Fanatix. And also just follow me on LinkedIn at Heather Younger. That is because I'm in the process of writing a book based upon this podcast, which will have amazing stories of those on the show. And I'm going to be going a little deeper too, so you will not want to miss it. But I'll be putting out tidbits, asking for feedback related to the book cover and just ideas and colors. I want you to be a part of that. I want you to lend your voice to that. Also, don't forget to subscribe to our newsletter at customerfanatics.com, and you'll get a couple freebies as well, including the first chapter to my book and some emotional intelligence tips as well. Thank you so much for listening, and hopefully you enjoy this show. Hi, everybody. This is Heather with the Leadership with Heart podcast, and today I'm very excited to have Steve Browne as my guest. I'm excited because over time I've been watching him. We're connected through kind of social media, LinkedIn and Twitter, and I see a lot of his posts focus on employee engagement and the importance of the role that people play inside the workplace as far as the culture, just the success of businesses overall. So, Steve, that's why I have you on the call. Welcome.
Hi, Heather. How are you?
I'm doing great, actually. It's beautiful here in Colorado. It's nice and sunny and not too hot. So.
It's oppressively hot here in Ohio, so
is it?
I have a little less oppression.
I'll be going to Florida here soon, and that's going to be twice as oppressive, I'm sure. So I'm trying to build up my mind up about trying to make this a positive experience.
Sounds good.
So where are you right now in your leadership journey?
I thought that was a really intriguing question that you posed when we got prepared for the show. I find myself not reflecting nearly as much as I should. I'm in the midst of a career journey that's much more hands-on than others tend to have. I don't see leadership as a mantle. I see leadership as an opportunity because you can lead, in any level, at any role, in any capacity within organizations. To me, it has to be more hands-on. I don't do well with the people who use it from an authoritative standpoint, from I'm the boss and you're not. I learned from my parents. I'll just be honest. My parents if they modeled what they expected in others. And if I can do that and model it to other things, I think that's leadership. So I'm constantly trying to learn what that's like because I would like to say I model things well all the time, but be too utopian. I fail like everyone else. But I think modeling is my style, adapting with others, meeting where they are, accepting people for who they are and what they bring. So to me, it moves and flexes a lot more than it's a distinct statement.
Awesome. So did the drive for you to lead people come from your parents, like watching how they led and you were like, I want to do well like them? Or where else did your drive to lead come from?
I've always been attracted to others that are just genuine when they walk in the room. You don't have to tell them to be authentic. They just are. You just see it, feel it. And when I see that in every aspect, whether it was schooling or in workplaces or in my community, I was always drawn to people who just say, boy, I see this in you. One of the examples, I'll never forget this. I was in scouting forever because I wanted my son to be in scouting. I was not a scout because I had a rotten leader. And like in a lot of cases, when you get a rotten leader, it just takes one experience and you're out. So while I was there, Janet Rader, just amazing leader. She would always come up to you and say, hey, you know what? I think you make a good, and she'd tell you the position. See it in you. And I go, what? And that just advocating for somebody or affirming somebody genuinely, I became a den leader for my kids. And then they go, you know what? You're a great cub master. I'm like, okay. And then when my son crossed over into scouts, the scout master, other troop that we were going to go to, says, hey, I'm going to give you a year off, but then you're going to take my place. If people see that in you, and not that you try to force it on others, but people find that and see that naturally in you, I'm drawn to that type of leader. Authenticity to me is key in anything, faults and all.
That's great. Yeah, it's interesting when we think about what are we missing? As leaders in the workplace, what are we missing when we're not paying attention to what's right in front of us? I years ago, maybe like 3-4 years ago, I wrote an article about this plum tree that's in my front yard. And I didn't know it was a plum tree because I guess I was just that about it. And because I wasn't a green thumb. So my neighbor who was moving out, so he'd lived next door for about 3 years. And then he was moving out and he goes, oh man, we used to make the best plum jam from your tree because the plums would fall in our yard. And I'm like, plum tree? What? So I didn't know what a plum tree. So he got great juicy plums. He made plum jam, never shared it, didn't know he was taking them. After that, I kept looking for plums every year. And it took like 2 years and finally maybe 5 popped up on our end of the tree. I hadn't been looking for the plums, but they were right there all those years and someone else was there to pick them. And it made me think of how leadership is, where what's right in front of us and how are we missing it because we're just not paying attention. And maybe we aren't even helping people flourish and grow. And like you were saying with this leader, the scoutmaster, how they put you in the position to lead. They said, you're next. And here are the things you're going to do to be set up well. Right?
Right. And the thing I liked about it, the approach was this. It wasn't, hey, do you want to? It was, hey, I see this in you. Too often we ask people to volunteer or to step up or to rise to the occasion. I am a huge enemy, is not the right word. The whole high potential thing, hate it. Just hate it. I think, if I see this in you and say, Heather, I see this in you, you're either going to be attracted to that or you'll say, hey, I appreciate that, but it doesn't have to be as defined and formal and structured as most people try to make it. You did our review, Heather, and now we see that you have the following 4 strengths and we're going to build on the strengths. Leadership to me is more conversational, and like you said, observable. You can see it in others. And you can see how they treat others. I think that's another key for me when it comes to leadership. People who self-proclaim creep me out. I would rather say, I see you leading. I can just watch it, and I watch by how they treat others first and how they talk about others when someone's not there.
Yeah. I just read an article in the journal just today, and it was about Walmart. And they're using AI in an interesting way. So if someone's working inside of Walmart, whether they have a good reputation or not, this is kind of a smart idea. They have people wearing basically like virtual reality stuff on their head. And if they're looking to promote in the organization, they have to wear this virtual reality thing that allows the managers above to watch how they're interacting with customers, coworkers, if they're issue spotting problems around the floor, how they're solving those problems, and they're just watching because obviously it's a large workforce. It's hard to really see it all. But in this case, it helps them be able to, they don't make it where they won't promote them if they aren't acting so way, but it does help to weed out people who really obviously don't have a clue or maybe don't have it in them, like you said. I love the way you say it, where if you're having a conversation with your direct supervisor, so let's say that supervisor has 15 employees, that's a lot of direct reports, and that could be the situation, which is why it's hard to pinpoint how great they are. But if you're able to have 5 to 8, right, direct reports, you're able to be looking and watching all the time, and you can sit with them and have those conversations very frequently, right? It's harder, of course, if you don't have a good structure in place where you have too many direct reports and you maybe can't take as much time to sit with people and see the greatness in them.
I agree. I think the other part is leadership can be in different components. It doesn't have to be this overarching, ever-present, always happening thing. Situational leadership is legitimate, and it happens constantly. In fact, that's probably more of the reality than overarching leadership. Situational leadership can happen because someone stepped up in the situation they were facing. And you go, wow, I never saw that in Steve. And what's that all about? Well, I need to pay attention or dive into this a little more. Without that relational aspect, from supervisor to subordinate, you're just missing. It's not wrong. I think too often in leadership, we try to categorize things by right and wrong instead of gradients that say, hey, I saw this here. Because someone may do well in a situation and still not be a leader. They just did well in that situation. Other people, you can see it over time, but it allows you to invest your time more intentionally in them.
I love that. That's probably a concept that has not boiled up in now this is the 71st episode. I think that's a good one to bring up and to make people start to think about. Is it that they're showing leadership in that one particular case, but can they show that for the long haul? Will that benefit the whole entire team over the long haul? Those are probably some really good questions to be asking. That's great.
Because I think it's easy to make a snap judgment. And I think a lot of the back to high potential programs you see in corporate America, it's people know how to shine and when to shine, but you have to ask, is that sustainable? I love highlights, but it's hard to be sustainable. I would rather have somebody who can lead in the long haul. If I need a SWAT team person, I'm going to get that person who's very good at that SWAT team mentality. Hey, come in, kill it, go. And lead in that area. But that may be where they lead well. But if you say, I need you to run division, that's outside their capability. And we don't see that both as being valuable. We use the larger scale as more valuable when it comes to leadership. I think it's a big miss, really big miss.
Yes, that's a very good point. And so in where you're at now, where you currently are working, or where you've worked in the past, how have you used it, or how have you actually delved into kind of the gradations of leadership and using that as far as, like you said, building out a business? So if you are in HR and ops and you need to have the person who's over the head of operations, and then the division person, and then the department person, and then the person who's just a team leader, and the person who just is on a certain product, how do you work that out in your mind as far as structurally?
The thing I try and measure first is capacity. Capacity people are more naturally able to take on more. Now, that doesn't mean people, it just means more. Because there might be people who are good capacity project-oriented people, ops-oriented people. They can just develop incredible processes and functions and systems. And they may be able to lead an area of business, but not the people within that business. Or may have a capacity to integrate people, but they struggle on the process side. I haven't found many people that can do both well. You can find a few hybrids, but it's hard. It'd be nice from an HR perspective. I'm toying with this idea and working on it. My job is to be a bridge. My job is to see others and help them succeed in their role, anywhere from the front line to the CEO. So that doesn't mean I'm the coach. It just means, how can I help you succeed in what you're doing? To me, that helps build the leadership capabilities in them, as well as understand when they hit their walls, and we all do. And when you hit a wall, you go, okay, well, gosh, am I good with that? Will that fill a role or a function within my company? If it does, then get it every day. Go at it. I remember going to a McDonald's, I'm in the restaurant business. That's not the restaurant I work in, but I went. Many of my experiences with McDonald's have not been positive. Because they tend to focus on what they're not doing instead of what they are doing. And most of the employees, including the managers, complain about the situation, about the pace, about the person who didn't show up. I mean, it's just a really toxic environment. But there was a young man at one of the McDonald's I went to who thanked every single employee for everything they did. And he stood in the middle with his head on a pivot. So Joe for putting the order in right. He thanked Mary for making the food right. He thanked Susie for the drive-through right. He did work himself, and then he thanked every customer. He showed incredible leadership through his actions. And the people just could not, you could tell they wanted to work for him. When you can see that kind of behavior, that manifests itself. That's not a program. It may be inherent in who he is or how he views others, but he didn't see McDonald's as a trial full of obstacles and complaints. He said, this is my job, this is my team, I'm going to make it succeed. It was a great model to me to say, how can I see that in others? How can I show you? I know you have a tough day, Heather, but how can I make it good? I just heard Brene Brown talk at the annual conference, and everybody's all about Brene Brown, and they should be because she's freaking amazing.
Yes.
She said something that stuck with me. I'm going to use it forever. And it's one of those obvious things like your plum tree. We tend to focus on what isn't instead of what is. I want to focus on what is. What's observable? What's measurable? How can I build around that? The isn'ts are still there. But we tend to say, we tend to focus on leadership from, are you a good problem solver? Instead of, are you a good leader who figures out problems?
Mm.
Are you a good leader who sees the best in others? Are you a good leader who confronts others naturally instead of struggling with that? Just those different components, but turning it more from the affirmative versus trying to fix the negative.
Yes. Okay. That's good. Boy, yeah, that's powerful stuff. Okay, so we can all hear, I mean, everybody's listening and can obviously hear how together you have it and how emotionally intelligent you are and how thoughtful you are about all these processes. But one of the most important or best learning experiences on this show is when I have leaders on and they share a very specific story about a time when they were not the best leader they are. They were not the best version of themselves. They weren't real proud of it. And then what it is that they did to come out of it. So I'd love to hear a specific story from you and have you share that with the listeners.
Okay. Just recently, I got to speak at the annual conference for SHRM, and it's an honor, to be honest. And I was making a joke from the stage, full of a room full of several hundred or several thousand people. I didn't keep track. And I made a joke, a poor joke, about how, hey, don't rush out of the room because the next presentation probably won't be good anyway, because I thought I was the end of the day. I didn't know that the next presentation was happening right after mine. And the speaker who was following me, who's a friend, heard that and took it very personally. And it crushed me because, A, I never would do that. And in my haste to be funny, I said something very hurtful. So what I did was apologize to him. And then that wasn't enough. You could tell he was still very hurt. So I got on stage. And I went on stage and I said, hey, I made a mistake. I am so sorry. This was not good. And even though I thought I was trying to be fun, I wasn't. This next person is actually phenomenal. And they really are. A great resource. And you need to stay and learn from him. And I'm so sorry that if I said anything to hurt him or hurt others, that's just not cool. And I also went to the people who run SHRM, and I said, hey, I goofed up. I made a comment that was offhanded and it was not needed. And if you receive feedback poorly about me, I deserve that. And again, from my parents, own who you are, be accountable. Because you're gonna goof up, and I think too many people want to say, oh, it wasn't a big thing. And in the end, I don't think it hurt his presentation or his group, but it was callous and thoughtless, and I didn't need to do that. So in the midst of all of the flurry and excitement of having the opportunity to speak, I stubbed my toe pretty bad in front of an entire group of people. Still bothers me. Me. I want to help him out, but I think the big thing is when you fail, own it.
Yes, I love that. When you fail, own it. I think, by the way, I've had to apologize to my people way too many times. I mean, I can just remember probably in the last 3.5 years probably about 3 years when I worked for an organization, and then of course had a team. And what I did is, my biggest thing, kind of the cross that I have to bear, is when I'm frustrated, it's hard for me to keep it into myself. So when the frustration gets high, I'm not talking about a little bit of frustration, I'm talking about when it gets high, it's hard for me to keep it in. And so not every single day or anything, but I find myself once a year over speaking to people that I shouldn't be speaking to, about things I shouldn't be speaking about. And I realized that after I did it, without anybody coming to report it or say anything to me, I just realized I was in the wrong when I overspoke. Because what I realized is I could see body language change. And I started to wonder, how much of what I'm feeling translates to them, then translates to their behavior and all the results that we're getting, and their mentality and their morale. And I realized it was a whole lot, that the leader transfers a lot of that to their people, whether you think you are or not. And in this case, I didn't, right when I was doing it, I didn't realize it. Immediately after it, I was realizing, and then I had to go back and sit down with them and go, listen, this is not the leader I want to be. I need you to stop me when you even sense I'm going down this road, because I'm not going to tell you I'll never do it again. I'm going to try hard not to do it. Like it's a development area for me. Right. And so this reminds me of that. Just, I had to go back and say, I messed up, and please just tell me next time. And I'll try my hardest not to do that. Again, and leaders are not perfect. This is a journey. That's why there's no destination. No destination. There's a journey to nothing. It's just more enlightenment and more problems and more solutions and more ups and more downs, right?
I agree. And what I really like that you did, and something I'd like to see leaders do more often, is give people permission to give you feedback. Not give me feedback. Give me permission. Let me know that I'm coming to you on purpose. I'm seeking your insight. And when I goof, you need to be my guard. If you see me going down that path, you have permission to pull me off that path or pull me back in. Leaders don't do that in organizations. They tend to deride. They tend to blame. They tend to deflect. Instead of saying, I had a boss, terrible story. I was in a performance review, and here we are, is my annual performance review, and it wasn't a good relationship. He was very self-centered as a person, and I hope I'm not. But he says, you know what? You tick me off. I go, why? He says, because when you make mistakes, you own up to them. And I go, well, that's interesting. You're the head of finance. Should I be concerned that when you make mistakes, you blame others? And it got ugly.
Oh, I'm sure.
But it's interesting. I think we misconstrue feedback, because most people don't give feedback openly. They give it negatively because it's how they're taught. Instead of saying, this is what I see, Heather. Hey, remember when you told me that you're going to get frustrated? Boy, it seems like you're going to get frustrated. You cool? And even if you get frustrated and yell at that time, at least they knew they had the permission to come in and do that and intervene. Man, if we did that in organizations, you see books and books and books and TED Talks written about it. We just don't. We don't allow people to have that avenue to us, which is a shame.
So with all the locations that you have at the place that you're at, where are you working right now?
LaRosa's Incorporated. We're a regional pizzeria in Ohio, mainly Cincinnati, Ohio, greater Cincinnati.
And there's a lot of employees, lots.
If you include our franchises, we have about 4,000, and we have 65 stores.
Wow. So my question is always for leaders, how is it that what do you do to reconnect? For example, I don't know how many direct reports do you have? How many direct reports do you have?
I have 3 direct reports.
Okay, good. So that doesn't make it too hard. What do you do because you're traveling about and you're in meetings and stuff, conferences? What do you do to reconnect with your people in a deeper way that makes them know, like, listen, we're still connected here. We're still on the same page.
We talk about life a lot more than we do work. We talk about work when we need to, and it's very intentional. The thing that I've learned is learning their style. We use Strengths Finders, and I know there are a bazillion assessments out there. The thing I like about Strengths Finders is it's not comparative. Other assessments are you're this or that, instead of saying you're this. And to take time to learn who they are and say, okay, I need to come to Shauna this way because when I do, she's gonna learn from that, or she's gonna act with that. When I go to Rebecca, she does this. When I go to Julie, she does this. But if I come just from my style and my strengths, it doesn't stick because people don't hear it, and they're not being malicious. They just don't. It's not connecting. I think the other thing is something I've been practicing for most of my career is I don't care about my desk. I care about the people. And so I will spend time with people intentionally to hear the good stories, to hear the rough stories, and to genuinely understand how things are going. It doesn't concern me or bother me if they have different interests than I do, if they have different beliefs than I do, because they do. Everybody does. But I'd rather learn more what drives you versus what I think you should be driven by. It sounds a little altruistic, and when I bring this up, people go, oh, well, that's good for you. I'm like, no, it works. When I go to the pizzerias and talk to a general manager and he or she wants to just talk, just to get it out, that is more worthwhile use of my time than anything I do. My desk does not care.
I actually love altruistic people. Okay, so I'm if you've ever watched any of my videos, I'm telling you right away, you're going to be like, this person is really living in la la land, and that's all right. I'm all right with people thinking that. It's because I live in my mind. Like, my mind is my reality. So I create the reality through thinking things a certain way. So, for example, when I was coaching an executive recently, and I talked to her about assuming positive intent, and it was not her natural inclination to assume positive intent inside of people. And it is mine. So again, I get hurt because of that, but
sure,
because I'm always assuming this person's doing something for the right reasons, for the reasons that are not, hurtful to me or to those around me. That's how I start off with things. So I love when I hear people say things that this like, what drives you more than what you should be driven by. Are you kidding me? That is so Heather. Like, you and I are vibing right now. I love it. I love it. Keep it up. Keep it up with that stuff. Because I do think that people think like you, that way of thinking is why the Leadership of the Heart podcast is created to be. It's to be highlighting people who don't think like other people. They don't relate with people like the majority of people. They truly care about other humans, not what the people can do for them, but what they can do to help the other people grow and flourish and find their path in life. And that's what it's about. So thank you for being here. That's awesome.
Oh, I appreciate it. It's nice to talk to like-minded people as well. The thing I like about it is I don't get discouraged when people aren't. I think too often, well, people aren't like me, therefore. No one's like you. And that's cool.
Yeah, that's a good point. We're all so different. It's true.
And I believe people want to talk about others. I really do. And the reason I can prove that is if I meet with a general manager, they tell me about their partner, their spouse, their children, their dogs. They talk about others. Rarely do they just talk about themselves. Or they'll spend the majority of the day talking about the coworkers they have, not them. You have to get past some of the anger and frustration and angst that happens in the midst of a daily job. But underneath it all, people want to be connected outside of themselves. Mm-hmm. Very, very rarely have I found somebody who's so self-involved that you never hear about anybody other than themselves. They're just fun to mess with.
So for those that are listening, let's say leaders that might be struggling a little bit in their leadership and they're at a crossroads in their journey and they need a little bit of oomph, right? They need some more something to energize them. What might be a pearl of wisdom or two you might leave them with?
I wish people would enjoy life a little more and have fun. Work is part of who we are. It's not all that we are. But even in work, have fun with it. You're doing something that matters. I don't think that we affirm people enough to say that what they do matters. We tend to rank it or put something above another thing. One of the great things about working in a pizzeria is people that make dough, without them, I don't have a job. The people that make pizzas, if they don't do it well, I don't have a job. And the person who greets the people on the phone, if they don't take care of that guest, I don't have a job. So I think just reminding people that the contribution they have matters is a huge component in leadership that's missing. I want to get away from a report card mentality that we have in organizations where I rank and put certain percentiles just to have some data that means nothing that I'll never act on. Instead of saying, gosh, what you do, Heather, matters because I think you'll rise and perform like you've never performed before. You can't be disingenuous. It can't just be a by, hey, bop, 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 here's the pat on the back thing. Context as to why it matters, and you'll see people flourish, and they're aching to. They just are. You just got to give them the chance.
I love that. Yeah, one of the main reasons that people stay on a team with the manager and an organization is that idea of meaningful work, and it's really, when it boils down to it, the manager's role to invite the investigation into what makes things meaningful to people that are on their team. And so sometimes we show them what's meaningful. Sometimes they show us what they feel is meaningful by what they decide to put their time into. And we as leaders say, okay, great, we're going to provide more access to you to do that thing you find to be more meaningful, even if it isn't what your current job is. So the more that we can orchestrate it from above in HR, where we can provide more of these insights to leaders, where then the leaders, the managers of the people have to then drive forward this initiative that says, what are your people? What makes your people tick? What drives them to be their best? What makes them press that button, that not snooze button, but press it and make them hop out of bed to jump to go to work, right? So this is the kind of stuff you're talking about. And I really appreciate these nuggets. I do think people will take a lot away. Now, one of the things before we go, I do want to mention that you have a new book, right? The title is HR on Purpose. Is that right?
It is.
And I know you didn't, I know you didn't intend to talk about it, but I thought that was kind of cool. I wanted, because you said you used purpose one time, and I thought, oh shoot, I got to make sure I mention that. So just, can you give us a summary of what that book's about?
It's a positive look at a great field. This is the only field I've ever been in. And I've enjoyed the ups, the downs, the ins, the outs. I wish more people would enjoy what they do. But in anything, you have to have purpose. And I don't mean that as a catchphrase. I think, again, the whole thing that you said about jump out of bed and let's go do this. I love going home every night knowing the next day I have more things to do. I'm never finished. I'm good with that. And the reason is I'm with people, and people are a work in progress. What we've lost of in HR is that we're people as well. It's the profession that apologizes for what it does instead of enjoys what it does. It's the one profession that constantly beats itself up instead of saying, what I do helps people. So more of a positive look to say, hey, what you do matters.
Oh, I love that. Well, for those who are listening, obviously check out Steve's book. I think that's going to be amazing. I'm going to go and get it right after this show. And if you really love this episode, please do, with the listeners, please do share that with those who you think might benefit. And hopefully you'll take some of the nuggets that Steve shared with us to heart, some of the learnings that are here, and share it with everybody. And don't forget to write a review too, wherever you listen, on Apple Podcasts or wherever, because when you do that, right, it brings us up in the algorithm. It gets people's eyes on the show more frequently. So I appreciate everybody joining the Leadership with Heart podcast. And thanks again, Steve.
Thanks, Heather. It's been great to talk to you and get to know you a little more.
Thank you for listening to the Leadership with Heart podcast. You can grab the show notes by visiting customerfanatics.com. And don't forget to subscribe to our newsletter.